Okay guys, welcome to another riveting installation video. We're going to teach you guys how to do the Stage 2s for the 2016 Tacoma, brought to you by Armageddon Armor. So what you see here on the ground here is all the parts that you're going to receive. You're going to have a couple side plates here. This is the main wing structure. Then we have this, this fill plate here that goes like so. And then some various brackets and braces and everything to keep it all nice and strong. Also some shims, some bolts, some sticky pads to help with the shims, and finally some edge trim. We need another one of these actually. Some edge trim to finish up the look and make it look real nice. And with that, I guess we're going to get started. This shouldn't take too long. Expect about a couple hours, I suppose, to get it all fit and welded. And we'll start right now. This is where your old cut that you made for the original slimline, that's all going to get cut off. So, in order to make sure that we're getting our tape line set in the exact spot we need it to, we're going to need to make sure we keep a lip right under this edge, because this lip is what this large piece of trim. Basically, you're going to take off your old trim that you had for the slimline, and we supply a new piece of one-piece trim. So whenever you're putting this trim on, just keep in mind you're going to have a lip for it to stay on. So this angle, this crease, is going to be your guiding line that you lay that tape down. And it gets a little difficult to run your tape line around this curve without getting a little warbly, which is why we're going to give you measurements at precise points so you can try to make sure that your tape line is going to meet requirements. So from the get-go, we want to leave this lip here, and that lip, it needs to be at least 3/16. And I always recommend not cutting as much as you think you should, and then coming back and trimming later, because once you cut it off, you can't put it back on. So this lip is right at 3/16, but I would add another 1/16. Go ahead and make that a 1/4 inch, so that if we need to, we can always trim some off later. Another point that you're going to want to try to match up to is I'm going to measure from this crease right here, the end of this crease right at that edge, to the edge of this point. And you're looking for 1 3/4, or roundabouts, real close. Now that we've got our original line kind of sorted out, we need to wrap it around this bumper. So the next measurement you're going to want to pay attention to is from the edge of your bumper here down to where the cut line needs to be is right at 7 1/4. But once again, oh sorry, you wanted to see that closer again? Right at 7 1/4. But once again, you're going to want to, I would leave another 1/8 inch on it all around the entire way, because what could happen is you end up cutting a little too high up, or you didn't follow the line just right. You come up a little bit. Cutting it that 1/8 inch lower will allow you to correct that out and fix it, unless you just want a giant hole and not do it right. So 7 1/4 right here. Follow it up. Would you come around here, cameraman? Follow it up by measuring from the middle of the bolt to the edge of your cut. Is going to be 1 7/8, 2 inches. See that? Okay, so we talked about our starting points and our ending points, but a real challenge is wrapping it around this corner so that the line stays straight and you don't accidentally rise up too far. So I'm going to give you a couple more measurements based off some body lines that you'll be able to use to make sure your tape is correct. So from this edge of the fog light housing, we're going to use our tape measure, run it all the way up the top until we get to this crease in the bumper. And you're going to want to measure out about 9 inches at this point for your tape line to rest on. Okay, so for our final measurement, we're going to make an artificial line here, but we're going to do it by connecting 2 points on the truck that everyone will have standard. So using our tape, we're going to connect this point right here at the edge, right? And we're going to run it around until the top of the tape is right on that same crease that we just measured from just a moment ago. Now we've got a standard line to measure from to grab these other 2 additional points so we can make sure our cut's the best it can be. So from your tape line, and my measurements are going to come from the top of the tape line because I don't know what width you're going to be using. So the line we want to focus on is the point from here to here, right? And we have 2 creases right here that we can measure at. So that's the ones I'm going to give you. Right now you're going to want the first crease. This one measured 9 inches if you remember. You want this crease from the top of the tape line to measure right at 8 3/8. Coming over to this line here from the top of the tape line once again, 7 7/8. So to recap, the measurements that you're going to want to use from the beginning to end are from this point to the corner is 1 7/8. No, I'm sorry, 1 3/4. We want a 1/4 inch lip from the top of the tape to this point. You want it right at 9 inches. From the top of the tape at the next crease. Whoop. 8 1/2. And what I'm doing is I'm adding an 1/8 inch for you so that we can make sure not to cut too much. 8 1/2 on that point. We're gonna do right at 8 at the second crease. We're not going to use the tape line for this because we can just measure straight from the crease down to the spot. We're at 7 1/8. Let's go ahead and make that 7 1/4. So come down to 7 1/4, and then from the bolt, from the center of the bolt to the edge, make that 2 inches. Once you've got all those points marked with a Sharpie, that's when you're going to want to take your tape. Alright. You're going to run your tape line on the bottom half of your bumper from point A all the way to the end. Cut with a Dremel just like you did with the slim line. You may have noticed that you've still got a giant piece of black plastic fender liner hanging down here. So in order to get rid of that, what we're going to do is as soon as I find my tape measure, god dang it.
Tape measure?
Tape measure! Found it. We're going to make a straight cut, and you're aiming for that the bottom of the second little vent here on the passenger side, and essentially about 1 inch down from your main cut here. You can, whenever I did this, you can try to come up a little taller, but for my purposes, I really wanted it to cover as much as I can because you got the fog light in here too. So even if you have your fender liner hanging down a little bit lower than your cut, that's all right. The stage shoe is going to cover up anyway, and it's going to look great. So from the bottom of my cut, well, let's just go from the bolt here. It's right at 3 1/4 inches that I started making the cut, and then I tried to make it a straight line and came to the second vent on the passenger side. Let's go check out the driver's side. Okay, so on this driver's side, God bless Toyota, they didn't do it the same way. Of course they didn't. So we're still going to do the same sort of 3 3/4 cut here at the bottom, but there's nothing else to really go by. The only thing that you can kind of identify is this one. Can you see in here, cameraman? Follow. They got this one clip. You want to make sure you keep that clip, otherwise you're going to have nothing to hold it. So whenever you make this fender liner cut for the driver's side, you're just basically going to have to come out as straight as you can, just below that push pin. All right, guys, so the first thing I'm going to do is open up our hardware pack here. Get these bolts out. We're going to use these bolts to mount the side plates directly to the Armageddon Armor bumper. And you'll see for a second here, you'll have these 3 holes here. Now in your Armageddon Armor bumper, you should have welded the weld nuts in specifically for the Stage 2s when you did it. If you didn't, we did include nuts and bolts so that you can just bolt it in normally. But this makes it a lot easier because you can just simply, can you see this, camera guy? What we're doing is we're matching up these holes here. All right, you should see that we've got all of our holes lined up. And we just generally want to put this right in the middle because there is some wiggle room and we want to be able to have as much of it as we can. So if you put it in the middle, that'll make sure that you get everything you can if you need it later. All right, guys, so what I've done here is I put this side plate, I bolted it to the side of the bumper, directly in the center of the mounting holes. And you go ahead and tighten this down. One of the big mistakes that people tend to forget is to tighten the bolts down before you start setting your metal in place. Because once we set our metal in place and get it all welded up, it's entirely possible that if you hadn't completely tightened this down, that there's going to be a little bit of flex that you didn't expect, and it could adjust how everything actually sits when it's all said and done. So go ahead and tighten it down. I think these 3/8 bolts is like a 30 foot-pounds or something like that. Just make sure it's nice and snug, and then it's got no wiggle room whatsoever. All right, guys, so once you've gotten your side plate bolted in securely to the bumper, you're going to take your main wing structure right here. All right, and you can see it's got these two little tabs here on the end. Those are going to slip directly into these two tabs right here on the edge. And I recommend, after you get those in there, I recommend using a jack. Even the bottle jack in your truck will work just fine. Just get a 2x4 and make sure it's the most disgusting one you can find laying around your shop. And you want to hold this in place. Get it in there. You just want to hold this in place up here so that it's making just a minimal amount of contact with your bumper. Obviously, you want to jam everything up there. We just want to hold it in place where we expect it to be so that we can continue to set our other brackets and braces. All right, guys, once we've got our main structure put in place here, and we've got it into the got it tabbed into the side plate. You just want to make sure here that your metal's butted right up against each other, and you can tell because if you look up here, the edge of the material should be right on the edge of the flare as well. So if you're not butted up right, it'll be either too far in or too far out. So right now we've got our jack under the wing here to help it stay in place, and we're about to do a few tacks on the top side here to secure these two tabs, and also we're going to put this brace that tabs. You can see it's got a tab right here, and that tabs in here on the bottom, and then just rest right up underneath it. All right, make sure that's nice and perpendicular to the other plate there. All right, so now you can see we put this bottom brace in, which is actually going to hold the wing up at the position that we wanted. So I've tacked it at the 4 spots, well, 5 actually, top and bottom here, and then each one on these bridges here for the stitch weld. So now at this point, you just want to make sure that your the height that you've set it at has in fact stayed. So just let some pressure off your jack, and we're going to see just a slight separation, and that's fine because we don't want it jammed up on the plastic anyway. Once you're happy with that, we can move on to the next step.